Perhaps once or twice in your career, a really new idea comes along that changes almost everything. Network leadership is just such an idea. Despite all the time, money and energy that has been spent on new systems, new processes and so on over the years, huge problems remain in almost all large organizations today. And these problems are essentially people problems, whether it be the huge failure rates in major organizational change, the variable quality of leadership, or the simple fact that despite peaks of engagement in specific initiatives, today most employees are not seriously engaged and morale is often very low. All these problems, however, can be addressed effectively by viewing organizations as a set of interrelated networks, by adopting a network leadership approach to business, organization, innovation and change. At first sight, looking at the many different informal networks that exist within organizations, it can be pretty daunting. I mean, just look at that diagram. It's horrendously complex. However, given the right surveys and the right software tools to analyze results, we can begin to extract from that mess some really interesting networks that exist in all organizations. Strategic networks. Who gets involved in deciding the future of the organization? What are we going to be doing in 1 or 5 years' time? Who makes the decisions in terms of where we go, what we do, what we change? Who are the experts? Who are the people that actually have the often hidden knowledge within the organization? Innovation networks. These are a minority of people, but they're very innovative and most of them are underused. Influence networks, absolutely crucial for any success in major change programs. And work communication networks. How do we cope with the unexpected in day-to-day operations? And once we've identified all these networks and the key players at various hubs in these networks, a whole range of other issues fall into place. Leadership is more and more through key players in networks, and not necessarily through the formal hierarchy. And the formal hierarchy itself is changing. Again, the succession planning process begins to emphasize more and more those with really good influence in other networks. Decision making is through networked collaboration across all these networks. Innovation teams are chosen because of the networks they have, often across organizational boundaries. Implementation teams are selected because of their networks, particularly influence networks. Golden teams, they're an interesting feature of looking at network leadership. Basically, these are teams where the manager is particularly influential within the team and also innovative. And where that combination arises, we're looking at performance improvements of 20% plus. Cultural behavior driven by networks, often influence networks, and universally by peer pressure. Training and development revolutionized. Essentially here we're talking about the impact of development, not through so much formal training methods, which typically have an impact of about 10%, but much more on colleagues within their influence and other networks, and also working on innovation teams, implementation teams and so on, stretching individuals in areas that are beyond their day-to-day work. And finally, external networks, which transform parts of organizations. Those where, for example, R&D, again looking to establish and maintain networks outside the organization, and sales teams similarly, and so forth. Today, network leadership is really in its adolescence. We have lots of experience of big change programs succeeding, with innovation being much improved, succession planning getting very interesting indeed, and so on. But if we're an organization to really adopt network leadership looking forward over the next few years, we'd expect them to achieve 5 major things that are just not possible today. And the first, and perhaps the most obvious, is that many more managers will be real leaders. The whole succession planning process will be looking, at least in part, for leaders with significant influence networks across the organization. Change initiatives will achieve 90% of business objectives. Engagement and morale, staff morale will be consistently high, typically at least 20% above the average. And accelerated culture change will be achieved through peer pressure. The speed of innovation and change implementation times will also be transformed. Lots more innovative ideas, and it's time to market, time to implement, very significantly reduced.